Okay, picking up where we left off on page 433, we're getting ready to do a relative macro. Relative meaning it does matter what cell I'm on when I do this. Okay, so I'm going to start with selecting like a cell. I'm going to turn on use relative and then do record macro. And I'm going to call this one, I don't know, highlight. And I'm going to call it, you know, for H, for highlight. And what I'm going to do in this cell is I'm going to, you know, change the background color, maybe make it bold, and I don't know, change the font or something. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to developer and say stop recording. Okay, so it has recorded the fact that I've changed something. Now I could go to any one of these cells and say Control H. Control H. Whoa. Let's try that again. I'm not sure what I hit, but it wasn't Control H. So relative means I need to know what your starting location is. Absolute means it doesn't matter where you are. When you hit Control C, it's gonna go there and do, you know, and do the erasing. This one, of course, and to make this make more sense, you probably need the one that turns it on and one that turns it off, because this leaves your, remember, you don't have undo now, right? So this, now I made my spreadsheet kind of ugly and I don't have a way to undo it. But yeah, so typically you would go back and maybe make another one that says, here's the highlight and here's the unhighlight. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is, you know, maybe I don't want to do all this with control key, you know, just a keyboard thing. Maybe I want to do it with a button. I want a button out there that says clear invoice, so I don't have to remember, wait a minute, is it Control C or what is it? So I'm going to go here to the insert guy, and in the insert they have a list of controls, and I'm just going to pick a form control. Okay, now this part is a little weird because I'm drawing a button on the screen. So when I'm drawing, I don't have to worry about the cell locations, right? I can draw it anywhere. So I'm gonna draw me a button like right there. Okay, and so it's gonna come up and say, what do you want, which macro do you want to run? Would you like to create a new one? Would you like to record one now? I'm just going to use the clear invoice one. Okay. And I'm not going to go in and well, I guess we could. Edit the text inside this, whoop, and say, you know, clear invoice. And make this thing read something a little better than button number 84. Okay, so let's try it. Go here and add some stuff, and then I hit the button and doink, it runs. So this button is kind of cool. Now the only weird part about buttons is it's kind of hard to select them. There is a way you can dock them inside a cell, but we're not going to do that right now. It uses the same thing we did. Remember when we docked an image inside a cell and told it to kind of stay within the cell boundaries? Okay, I'm not going to do that, but anyway, so we went to insert. There's two rows. There's form controls and ActiveX controls, and I just used the simple one, the button, the form control. Dropped it on here, put my cursor in there, clicked on it, and you know, fiddled with it to make the text right. Anyway, and you basically have to tell it what macro you want to run when you push the button. It's pretty cool. Okay, on page 435, they talk about, you know, how to modify a macro. Nah, we're not going to do that. We can skip that. So instead, let's go to page 436 and talk about navigation. So let's assume that I've got, I mean, maybe 30, 40, or 50 of these tabs down here, and they don't fit. I mean, physically, they don't fit. You have to scroll on over to see them all and scroll on back, and all I want to do is just immediately go to a particular spreadsheet. So find me a spot, and I'm going to insert a hyperlink, just like this was a web page. So I can go in here like insert, and I want to tell it that I want to do a hyperlink. Now, when you hit this, it's going to say, well, wait a minute now, is this you want to go to a web page or a file? No. I mean, yeah, you could, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. I want to do inside this existing document, okay? So I want to, and so pick one. For example, down here, they have a bunch of things here. I want to go to, I don't know, the therapist page, okay? So I basically click that, so it's going to immediately go to that. Now it looks just like a hyperlink, doesn't it? I mean, it's got the underline, the whole thing. Admittedly, the title here is a little funky. You might be able to go clean that up a little bit. You can go in there and edit the hyperlink and you know, what text do you want to say? How about something like "Go to therapist"? Something. Okay. That's a little better. So now I'm inside my document and I click on this and boing, it's the same thing. It's just going down here and clicking on these tabs. You're just making it a little easier for them to get. And if you have like a main page, perhaps when you go to the therapist page, they would have one that says return to main or something. You know, just a way to prevent people from having to go through. I mean, in this case, there's only what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tabs, and they're all visible. It's no big deal. But you know, if I was viewing this on a phone or something, where my real estate was a little tight, maybe I prefer having little hyperlinks out here. So hyperlinks, they work just like you'd expect from a worksheet. I mean, a web page. Okay. There are ways you can make a worksheet go away. Let's say, for example, that I don't want to show the therapist on the list here at all. One way to do that would be just right-click on the tab and say hide. Okay, now it's hidden. Okay, so it's still there, but it's hidden. So what do you think is going to happen when I try to navigate to a hidden sheet? What do you think? Well, let's try it. Nothing worked. Didn't do it. So when you hide one of these worksheets, you can't navigate to them. Now, you can use formulas that refer to it, okay? You just can't navigate to it like we did here. Now, how do you get it back? I mean, I know I can right-click on like invoice and hit hide, but how do you click on something that you can't see in order to unhide it? Well, they make it easier. Click on any one of them, doesn't matter which one, and hit unhide, and it's going to show you the list of hidden sheets. And then you can say, yes, I'd like to unhide it. Okay, just to prove my point, this now works. Okay, cool. So, hiding individual tabs. So, hyperlinks do not work when you hide a tab, but formulas, they work just dandy. Isn't that pretty cool? Okay. There are, on page 439, they go off on a kind of a wild tangent about trying to hide things to get things out of the way. Ways you can reduce the clutter and, you know, not show a bunch of things. For example, perhaps in your world, you didn't want to show any of the tabs at all. Now, that's different than hiding them all, because you really can't hide all the tabs. You know, when you finally get to the last one and say hide, it's going to go, dude, you don't have anything left. Okay, so this is more of an option kind of thing that says make that whole thing go away. I don't want to see any tabs whatsoever, meaning that the only way you can navigate is through these navigation functions, or perhaps you don't want them to navigate at all. It's kind of your business. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing is scroll bars. A lot of people don't like scroll bars, so you can turn the scroll bars on or off. You can turn the tabs on and off. You can get rid of row and column headings, so it looks like a form, you know, a printed form rather than an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, again, if I'm using Excel, the fact that it looks like an Excel spreadsheet is not kind of disruptive to me. But you could have other people who, you know, don't have a clue what it is you're doing, and so to them it's just an application where there's an invoice. You know, they don't know anything about Excel. They don't need to know anything about Excel. So anyway, the way you do that is kind of funky. You go back to File and go back to Options. Remember this got. So if I go to File and Options, There's a whole list of things. And one of them is Advanced. And the Advanced tab talks about all the things that you can show in a document. Now, you got to be careful that you don't turn things off everywhere. About halfway through the document, you get to this list that says display options for this workbook. Okay, now we're cooking. Because I don't want to turn off scroll bars on every worksheet everywhere. Okay, I just want to turn off scroll bars on this worksheet. So when you get to that point in this list, this is only the things that are applicable. So here's some of the things you can turn off. Scroll bars, the tabs, the grouping of dates and the auto filter. I'm not sure why I would need that. The row and column headers and all the rest. You just turn things on and off as your heart desires. I'm not going to bother to demo that because it's kind of sort of simple. And again, if you're building a full honest-to-God real application, you might want to consider that. Otherwise, you know, hey, it's an Excel spreadsheet. That's okay. The other one they talk about that's not in the options is making the grid lines go away. Because, you know, if you want this to look like an honest-to-God real invoice and not an Excel spreadsheet, these little grid lines in here look kind of funky. Remember how you do that? There's a little view here, and there's a thing called grid lines, and doink. Now, you know, again, if you got rid of the headers and column headings and row headings, this would look more and more like a Word document. I'm going to turn that back on. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is protecting a worksheet. Now, there's several levels of protection that are afforded to you, and let's talk about, first of all, what is it you're trying to do? Clearly, sometimes you don't want anyone else to see your worksheet at all, okay? So you don't want them to be able to open it at all. That's one level of protection. The other is, yes, they can open it and poke around, but they can't change anything. So it's essentially making it read-only. And then others are bits and pieces of it are read-only, and yet I can still go into a few cells, maybe not many, and I can still, like the timesheet thing, right? I lock down the spreadsheet so Bob can go in and add his time, okay? But he can't change, you know, the time scale or the hourly rate or any of that. You know, he's only got a couple of cells. Now, a lot of people, what they do, when they start locking cells like that, they use a different shading to kind of visually remind people, here's a cell that you're allowed to change, and here's a cell that you're not allowed to change. Very much like what I do to you guys in the homework assignments, where I shade cells in yellow and saying you must replace this with a formula or a function. Same kind of concept. Okay, so there's a thing called workbook protection, and that basically is a technique. I'm going to go back here to File, and there's a thing here called workbook protection. And I can go in here and I can protect the worksheet and protect the structure. Primarily, we're talking about this. This is so that you can't go into a worksheet and start like adding a tab or, you know, creating a new spreadsheet or changing the format or, you know, just the structure of the worksheet. You can't delete an entire worksheet, that kind of stuff. So it's locking it down, but kind of at the big level. You know what I mean? It's not down into the weeds like Bob only can type into something. And the other one is worksheet protection. And this controls what people can do inside a particular sheet. Okay. So, there are ways you can do this. Whenever you do protect, you could put a password in any one of these at the worksheet level or at the workbook level. You could put a password in, so that you know, when you needed to go in and make some changes, you could override and temporarily turn off, you know, the protection, make your changes, and re-protect it again. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.